Hi, my name's Mark Ackroyd, Head of Advice Delivery, Strategy and Innovation for Lumiant. Welcome to Lumiant Live, the podcast for advice professionals that believe in a values-based advice experience, but still have that question, how does it all work? The Lumiant Live podcast connects listeners with other advice professionals to hear best practice client stories or business examples and lifts the lid on how they made it happen. To that end, today I'm joined by James Wortley, Director at Enlightened Financial Solutions in Mackay. G'day, James.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Us, mate. Good to have you here. Now, for those of you that don't know James, you've probably been living under a rock, but here's a little bit about EFS and James's team, just to help you identify where James is coming from. So the team at EFS typically deal with high income and net wealth pre-retirees and retirees. Their average investable assets are between $500,000 to $1 million. The team itself consists of 6 advisors and 6 support staff, and they manage 393 contracted clients who, on average, pay a fee of around $7,500. So a really impressive practice and one of our industry thought leaders. Today, James, you're joining us because you've brought in a bit of a client case study for us to unpack to see how you bring values-based advice to life at EFS. So tell us a bit about your clients.
Okay, so I'll be watching another screen, so if I'm not looking directly in the camera, I apologise for that. But yeah, this one was an interesting one because it's one of my clients that I've been dealing for well over 10 years, and they had a business. They actually sold the business and then moved to a different town, and now starting retirement. But obviously, with that big transition, when you're actually going from business person where you know absolutely everyone in town, you relocate, and then you're actually now trying to meet new people, but just starting pretty well a second life again. And then sort of the other part for that is, okay, what's important to you? And this is probably where the values conversation was absolutely brilliant. And I'll be able to talk you through some of the cards that these guys actually picked. And it's really interesting because when I talk to clients, I don't have any preconception of where they're going to go or what they're thinking about. And I think that's probably a real big tip for anyone that does values-based advice is, just be led by the conversation. So with this one here, especially for the business owner, their first card was actually become more active and healthy. So the one thing that we did was had a good conversation about, okay, why is that important to you? And what we found is that the father actually passed away early. So he was sort of late 60s and mother passed away early 70s. So that was a big thing for him in making sure that he's healthy, that he's going to be around for his 4 daughters. So again, big family. They're very close-knit family. So it's something that's really important to them. But becoming more active and healthy. So what we spoke about was, okay, what's really important to you, and what do you want to be able to progress as value? So the big thing for him was he loves surfing. So now he's relocated to the beach. So surfing, he's fair skinned like me as well. So I got to be very careful that sun. Again, with surfing is you need to make sure you got core body strength. So yoga was one thing that he wanted to be able to take up, that just has always wanted to do it, but just never done it. Also, casual drinking has always been something that always enjoyed, and obviously from a health point of view, going, okay, look, it's probably, especially once retired, you can have a casual drink and then become, drink a few more. So one of his goals was, okay, just to reduce that consumption of alcohol and continue to be healthy. So golf was actually a big thing. He's always done casual golf, but the one thing, and this is especially for those business people that know a lot of people in town, is they miss that business connection. It's huge. I'm a Rotarian as well, and I see that for people that actually retire and actually join a Rotary Club, is that's the one thing that actually really misses, that what's going on in the business community, what's happening, because they get out of the loop. So one of those things for him as a professional person is making sure that you still got that networking ability to be able to talk to people and meet new people as well. So in this case here, So golf. So again, he hasn't actually done it yet. This is where the accountabilities are starting to come into it. We're actually talking to him now about, okay, look, we're talking about the different types of clubs and big costs for some different clubs, but we're saying, okay, if that's really important to you, then you should do that. So we unpacked a lot there. The second one, and this is probably the more interesting one that I think, was there was a card called Live in a Better Place. So if you think about live in a better place, to me, my first thoughts are, okay, yeah, I want to live on the beach as well, beautiful sand. But his live in a better place was actually mentally. So this was the connection with, again, a business owner starting from scratch in retirement, going, wait up, I've got all this time now. What am I going to do with my life? Again, for his family, the kids have now gone through university. They now moved to different places, so they can't just come over for tea each night. So now he's actually going, okay, right, what am I? And I should say, very successful business person as well. So money's never really been an issue. But when we're talking about live in a better place, it was for him mentally is that retirement feeling that okay, what do I really want to be able to get out of the next 20, 30 years of my life? And again, a lot of it still comes back to its family. But one of the things that we uncovered was meditation course. He wanted to make sure that he can actually learn meditation. So again, as a business owner, Mark, I'm very similar as well. My brain just ticks over, and I always talk about epiphanies with my staff. They love the word epiphanies. They go, oh no, not again. But that's what they do. Is their brain is just so stimulated about, okay, what's some good ideas? How can I benefit my business? How can I increase business? And what other things can I do? So meditation was one of those good things for him. The other thing, his family was really important. They wanted to make sure that they actually funded a family holiday each year where they can actually bring their kids and also their partners and actually have a really decent allocation of funds to be able to do that. So that was something really important. But I think live in a better place. That was a really interesting one for me. Is it's not just physically, but it's also can be mentally as well.
Let's unpack those because in 3 or 4 minutes you've uncovered so much, or you've told us about so much about this client, and you've mentioned cards. So for those that haven't looked at a Lumiant experience or aren't familiar with that term, there's a deck of cards that you can sort of play with your clients where they typify values linked to 8 dimensions of well-being, and they sort of act as conversation starters. Take me back to when you first introduced those cards to this client. So he's a client of yours. He's going through this massive transition. How did you introduce those cards? Because that would have been a pretty different experience or a new experience.
Yeah, it was. And the good thing for us is we sent a video out to all our clients. So they were, every single client's prepared. Over the next 12 months, we'll be going through this values conversation. So it was pretty good. And again, for this particular client, they are very open to conversations because, again, the way that you can actually be a better person and better business owner is with coaching. So they're used to a lot of that, and especially when it comes back to cards. And this is probably the difference I see between goals-based advice and values-based advice. It's pretty critical in that with goals-based advice, the advisor leads the client to where the conversations is. But in this case here with values-based advice, the clients are leading the conversation. And it's fantastic because they open up the opportunity to be able to have a conversation about it because they've chosen those 5 given values or those cards that are really important to them in their life today. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that. So the difference here is goals-based and advisors articulating, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that goal. Let's try and put a nice little cardboard box around it because that'll help me with my modeling, my compliance needs, but also tick the lifestyle box. But values-based, you're a little bit more open-ended and done well by the sounds of things, James, can prompt the client to give you some really interesting and insightful thoughts like live in a better place means to me mentally, not necessarily physically. When you were in that conversation, because that's typically not a conversation that many advisors would have, right? We're trying to figure out how much you need to retire on. What does retirement look like for you? And what do we need to do to structure up a plan to help you with that? To have a conversation around what what does living in a better place mentally look like, must have been really challenging. How did you get into that, and what sort of conversation did you have? What questions did you ask? How did you unpack that?
Yeah. So for me, is always tell me why that's important to you, and a bit repetitive. You know how you talk about the sort of 3 or even 5 whys, and that's where that's probably an interesting concept in itself. Is that I think for a lot of advisors, they might get 2 or 3 times where they say, "Tell me more, tell me more." The gold is in the 4th and the 5th time where you're actually really narrowing down on it. And that's where I find I get the best gold from our clients, where it's really their deep thoughts, where a lot of this hasn't even been communicated to their spouse. This is just stuff that they've thought about. But then as we start to say, okay, why? Tell me more. And then as you're uncovering that, and again, it's an easy process. It's just, to me, tell me more. Oh, why is that? And the client just continues to lead you down that path where you're actually saying, okay, right, that's important to you. And probably where it comes back to, again, when we're talking about values is really important, but also we still need to be able to link some goals. And that's the interesting part for us is with Lumiant, we can just click on a quick goal. Just if something comes up, we can continue with the conversation, but we can quickly just add something in there and go, yes, this is really important. We park it, so we're going to come back to it and then continue on. We're actually having that really important conversation, because this is what it's all about, is values conversation. What's really important to their clients, how they live their best life. And that's, again, we're not talking about investments, we're not talking about markets, return stuff there that we really can't manage in any way, or we don't have any control over. Is probably more the better words. But yeah, so it's this is how do clients live their best life. And I want to throw this non-CFO spouse in, because I think that's the critical part. Again, Lumiant, it's all built around the non-CFO spouse, because the non-CFO spouse, they're the ones that don't really care about numbers, investments, performance, but what they care about is their family and values. What's really important to them. And just on this one, just for the partner side, just to be able to throw some of their cards in, one was master new skills and knowledge. So again, what are you thinking about that? So for them, they looked after the kids for 20, 25 years through university and schooling, and now they've got all this time because the kids are gone. What do you want to be able to get out? And for her, she wanted to make sure that she could learn new things. So things like weaving classes, propagating plants, just you go, wow, where did this come from? And then we started to build into, okay, help others live a more purposeful life. She wanted to make sure that she could teach her girls everything that she's known about financial matters as well, but also wanted to make sure that they're community orientated in their lives. So, okay, look, these are things that you guys should be doing as well. They've all moved to different parts, Sydney and Cairns and a few other areas. So they're going, okay, look, this is my values and what's really important to me, but I also want to be able to pass that off to my kids. So straight away, it just opens up so many different conversations that you can go in.
How did you find the conversation between the partners there? So, in Lumiant terms, we'll call it the CFO spouse and the non-CFO spouse. But your two clients, when they were unpacking each of their values, how did you find them react to each other's descriptions?
Yeah, they've pretty open relationship with those guys. So, but there were still things there that the other ones, so you could sort of see, just you sort of pop back a little bit and go, oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. Like land care was something that they've talked about mutually together to be able to do that. But they're looking to buy a 4-wheel drive back then. So that, again, a goal, 4-wheel drive, want to purchase that, and now want to join a 4-wheel drive club. So again, there are more goals that we're actually starting to build, and I suppose that as we're building all these, or more the summary of it is, we've got still built out there where they want to actually help the kids purchase their first house. So they're actually going to give them capital each. They've actually already helped 2, and they've got the other 2 to be able to help out in the next 5 years. So straight away, there's some strategic financial advice goals that come into that. But the conversation was where we had probably 4 or 5 different, what I call financial advice goals. How much money do you need in your retirement? Do you want to keep your capital drawn down, or what does that actually look like? Do you want to keep it growing? How much? If you've got 10 million now, do you want to grow it to 20 million? So you're having all these financial goals that we usually go in. We talk about diversification, everything else that goes with that. But now, flip that over after the values conversation, I've got now more life goals than I do financial advice goals.
They seem to still have financial connotations. I heard you speaking about meditation course. You still got to afford that. The golf. You're assessing different golf clubs. Like that's a cool conversation to have. Typically we're modeling which car or which house, but which golf club would be a fun conversation to have. Like, how are you finding those conversations?
Yeah, and but you probably hit the nail on the head there, Mark. Because when you got, especially for business people, especially when they've actually had a good profitable business, they're not very good budgeters. They know how to run a business and they know it's profitable, but they probably haven't really got a good understanding with where their money goes and what they're actually spending, especially when you're in retirement. Because generally our goal is, okay, what are the things that you need to be able to do from a capital expenses point of view? So with these guys here, they're building a house. So there's a lot of capital expenses, furniture, relocation. There's a lot of things actually happen, the dynamics of that. But coming back to cash flow, is they really don't know what that cash flow is. So they're actually talking about, oh, can I afford to be able to play golf at this particular place? So, okay, so this is where it comes back to even high net wealth clients or net worth clients, that budgeting is still a critical part of financial advice. And I think a lot of financial advisors actually miss that. It's they still get caught up.
Where do you think that comes from? That almost need for permission, right? To go, yeah, mate, you've got all the money you'll ever need. Of course you can play golf there, or yeah, go and pay for yoga, or go and propagate a million plants. Like where do you think that need comes from to validate that with you as an advisor?
Yeah, you still got to look at when you're in business is when you're actually going to go and spend a capital amount of money. You got to say, what are the reasons why we're actually going to do that? So they're still bringing that on in their own personal life to say, okay, what are the reasons why I should be spending this amount of money? So they're still looking at that business mind and bringing it over into their retirement as well. So it's a conversation piece, but sometimes we've got to show them that they can afford it. And then depending on how much money they're actually drawing down in retirement, this is what's happening with your capital. Are you okay with that? Guess what? You may not get to 20 million from 10, but you might be at 15. Is that okay if that means you're doing all the things that you want to be able to do in your life to live your best life? So to be able to do the meditation courses, go on holidays, give money to the kids to be able to do their houses, that's what's really important to them and what they value. Whereas sometimes the capital amount of money in the end that the kids are eventually going to inherit is not as important because they want to see them use that today and benefit from that. So there's interesting dynamics with every client that you actually see, but especially this one.
And James, if I can think about summarizing and summing up this story, we started with playing the cards, unpacking all of that, the difference between having a goals-led conversation to the client leading a values-led conversation, leading to conversations around yoga, which club's important to you, how do we get you that networking personal experience back, for the non-CFO spouse, engaging her around how does she take all the things that she's learned around financial education, pass that on to her children, also pass on some money to get their first house, but also facilitate her hobbies. If you summed all of that up, like, what do you think the impact to your experience as an advisor is of having that conversation? Like, how does that make you feel?
It feels great because it's all about a trust. That's the one thing that we do really well as financial advisors. Actually, we build trust really well with our clients, but we're now taking this to another level because the things that we're actually talking to them about values and what's really important to them are probably conversations that they've never had only to their spouse. So they're sharing that with us. So that's really powerful in its own right, that they're sharing stuff that's really important to them, but then also we've got the trust there that we're building a really fantastic relationship, and it builds loyalty, doesn't it? Because if they go to another financial advisor and they said, okay, look, this is what my financial advisor is doing for me, and the other advisor is going, oh, yeah, but I've got this investment, or you can do something here, and it's just completely different. It's a completely different relationship. So, and that's what it's about. We only got one chance in life, haven't we? And the best way we can live our best lives is still to be able to have some support, but having your coach there as well. And I think that's this big middle ground that we're actually getting into with And if it's not just financial advice here, we've got accountants there that eventually tax is going to start to make it a little bit more simpler as well. That this coaching of clients and delivering this best life, it's a huge opportunity to be able to get in. And probably the other thing I want to throw that into also, client value proposition. It's our core of client value propositions, what we talk to our clients, and when we're talking to solicitors and other professionals as well, that's what we do well. This is why we do what we do. It's really important to us to make sure that we can see our clients live their best lives, so that it just makes us different. But from a client value proposition point of view, is when you talk to other advice businesses where, okay, look, we do your investment, we do, so we make sure you're trying not to run out of money. So it's to me, there's a lot more value with the client value proposition we're actually offering our clients compared to the standard financial advice business.
Oh, and you can see that with every Lumiant Live podcast episode, we like to end with one question, which is consistent, which is, James, if you were offering a tip or a piece of advice to your industry peers who are maybe considering integrating values-based advice into their end-to-end client experience, what would that tip be?
I can do it really simply and just say, just do it. It's you would seriously, you would never look back providing values-based advice. There's no negative issues. Again, you just learn so much. I mean, so many different experiences that you actually have with your clients. But so there's all benefits. But what it does, it just making sure that we're here to make sure that we provide the clients advice in their best interest. So if we know more about those clients, just compliance just takes care of itself. So it's simple. Just do it.
What a great note to end on. I think there's a ton of best practice tips in there. You know, I heard things like when you introduce it, sending out a video to your client base so that they know that you're about to embark on this values-based experience, getting into the values cards and letting a client lead that discussion with your questioning being around, tell me more about why that's important, tell me more about why that's important, helping them craft goals aligned to their values so that they can see when they pick things like live in a better place mentally, that might mean paying for meditation. And lastly, just the will and the guts as an advice practice to get on with it and submit yourself to those conversations and learn more about your clients. Thank you, James. A really valuable episode, and thanks as always for your support.
Thanks, Mark.